Are you going to stay for the entire day?
It looks like I have to.
Okay. We don't even know if we'll get to that, so I'm heads up on that. You want to check in at lunchtime maybe if you don't want to sit here all day?
Yeah, I'll take off.
We have a really packed agenda, and I'm not sure what.
I'm interested in the first item anyway, so we'll stick around for that.
Okay. All right.
Around lunchtime, I'll check it.
Just letting you know ahead of time so you're not going to yell at me later.
I've never given a yell.
All right.
Right.
I'd like to call the meeting to order, and if we could get everybody to stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. Peter, are there going to be any agenda changes today?
Yes, item E3 has been pulled. That was one that was sent back to staff. She provided the information that was required, so we've rescinded that denial and pulled it from the agenda. But it was done after the agenda was released, so.
Okay, thank you.
Also, item 8 may, depending on timing, may need to be continued. I have to leave early today, and if we can't get to it, then I'd request that we continue that to the following meeting. But let's see how we go along. If the meeting progresses quickly, then we can probably get to it. If not, then I'd ask that we continue that. But
Okay.
we'll wait until we get to that point. So
Sounds
sorry for
good.
those here in the audience for that item.
Okay. All right, so next would be public comment for anything that is not on the agenda today.
Good morning, and
Good
I'm
morning.
really glad to see all of you. I just wanted to give you a little bit of a progress report on what's going on in West Point these days. Dollar General just got their building permit, and they have boots on the ground. They have materials up there. It looks like they're going to have a early September opening date, and we're really pleased to see that. We would have liked it earlier, but it is what it is, and just getting it is a major accomplishment. Also, we have our the county's allocating funds to refurbish the community hall up in West Point. This is a project that's dear to my heart, and we're looking at having that along with the Dollar General store as being a real draw and something that the community can use. Right now, it wasn't ADA compliant. There were some fire issues in there, and they're going to insulate it. It's not insulated at this time. New wall board. It's going to be fabulous. It's just going to be fabulous. What else do we have going on up there that you might be interested in? We still have money for our bike path that we haven't spent yet. Yes, it goes right in front of my property somehow. I don't know how that happened. and that's through the COG. It was grant money, and part of it is completed, part in front of the school. But we're going to continue down Bald Mountain Road. What else do we have? Let's see. First, it's really good to see you folks. You guys do a pretty darn good job, to tell you the truth. Sometimes you let your political beliefs, your passions, show themselves. And, I don't appreciate that, but it's part of who you are. I prefer that be from these folks out here, rather than up there. Yeah, I think in the let's get this rolling. Have a great day.
Okay, thank you.
Good news from West Point. Thank you.
Okay, going to consent agenda. We have approval of minutes from April 26, 2018. You all good? We go to have anything to?
No problem.
Okay, I'll take it. Public comment on the minutes. Seeing none, bringing it back, and no changes. Okay, then can I get a motion to approve?
I move we approve the minutes.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? No? Okay, carries by vote. Okay, now we're going to go into our public hearings, and we're going to start with 2018-018, the plan development for Mark Twain. And Gina, you're up. All righty, let's dive right in. So as Commissioner Muderdis just explained, we're looking at a plan development permit 2018-018 for the Mark Twain Healthcare District. The location of this project is the northwest corner of the State Route 26 in the Vista del Lago West in the Valley Springs area, shown on the map. So the project description, we're going to kind of go into a little background here. Basically, this is a reapproval of a plan development permit that was already approved by the Planning Commission back in 2016. That project actually was a multi-phased project consisting of a two-story, 19,581 square foot medical clinic with addition of a 74,000 square feet of future retail, eating establishments, potential grocery store, and possible hotel locations. That plan also included various parking and landscaping, meeting all the requirements of code. In addition, there were 2 right-in, right-out encroachments onto Highway 26. Including in that approval was a road modification for the interior road system, reducing the road standards from a 60-foot right-of-way down to a 24-foot right-of-way. Unfortunately, before we validated, or I should say before the healthcare district validated the permit by getting a building permit and commencing construction, the permit actually expired. So that expired on December 31st in 2017. So now we're looking at reapproving the project so that they can continue. There is a slight difference between the previously approved project and the project that we see today. There's a slight modification to phase 1, which we'll go into here in the next slide. So the difference between the current phase 1 and the previously approved phase 1 is basically the reduction of the medical clinic. So now, instead of a 2-story, 19,000 square foot plus medical clinic, the proposal is a single-story, 10,000 square foot medical clinic. Parking and landscaping, actually with the new proposed plan, there's more parking and more landscaping than was previously approved in the 2016 plan. Encroachment onto Highway 26. The difference is that there's a portion of the interior driveway that will not connect onto that phase 1 encroachment onto Highway 26. Here is here's a photograph or a plan of the overall modified site plan. See if I can use this pointer. So you notice here's the location of the medical clinic. The original site plan request for modified phase 1 does include the encroachment back out onto Highway 26, but what it doesn't include is this building here, which is future retail space, and this interior drive. Sorry, it's actually turned. This is the previously approved site plan. Might be a little hard to compare because it's actually backwards from the other one. But again, this was previously approved phase 1, including the 2-story medical clinic, a 7,000 square foot future retail space, interior road system with the encroachment onto Highway 26. Here's a close-up of modified phase 1 with a close-up of the previously approved phase 1. So you can see the difference really is that not only just the reduced size of the building, but the exclusion of this building, which is the future retail space, being pushed out into phase 2, along with the interior road system connecting all of this development back out onto the highway. Aesthetically, we found that the project is very consistent and compatible with the original approved project. You have to remember this is a planned development. So redesigning the building The architecture is actually very similar to what was previously approved. The overall design of the building is compatible. Building materials that they're using in the modified Phase 1 are very similar, if not the same, to the previously approved project. In addition, the colors that they have chosen for the new revised building are also similar to the previously approved colors scheme from the previous building. So overall, we find it consistent, and staff is satisfied that they've met the requirements for the plan development in that they are similar enough to the originally approved project. So here is a close-up of the modified medical clinic. Just take note of the architectural features, and we'll go to the next screen and you'll see exactly how similar they are to the original approved plan. So this was the original approved medical clinic back in 2016. Again, all the materials are very similar, if not the same. The color patterns are following the same, and the general architectural features of the building are very like. Little bit smaller, but you'll see the comparison side by side. Under our environmental review, back in 2016, we of course completed a full initial study, found a mitigated negative declaration, was approved with the original project. Now with the modified project here in 2018, really what we're looking at is, even though we're looking at a complete reduction, if you look at the overall scope, you're actually seeing that the current project is reduced in size from the original project. The one concern was the fact that the applicant proposed to actually build the encroachment onto Highway 26 along with with Phase 1, but did not want to build the connecting roadway to the encroachment. Caltrans will not issue a permit for an encroachment that does not have a road connecting to it. So at that point, they had some concerns with whether or not the omission of the road, the Highway 26 encroachment not coming along with Phase 1, if that was going to have any kind of an effect on the intersection, now that all that traffic would be diverted back out to the intersection of Vista del Lago West and Highway 26. At that point, they requested a modification or an update of the traffic analysis. The traffic analysis basically concludes that there is no negative effects on that intersection. Caltrans concurs with that finding and finds that the minor change really is so insignificant that our staff was able to, was actually back it up. We did an addendum to the original mitigated negative declaration, finding just a very minor change. So with that, what's going to happen is that encroachment out onto Highway 26 will actually be pushed out to Phase 2 and will not be included in Phase 1. At that time, the interior road connection will be built at the same time that the encroachment is built for the next future phase. So really, again, the only difference is the Highway 26 encroachment, the interior road system, that future 7,000 square foot retail space being pushed out to Phase 2, or the next future phase, and the reduction of the medical clinic in Phase 1. So the slight modifications to the Phase 1 are really, in our opinion, are very alike, and as the originally approved project, no significant impacts were found. Conformance with the original 2016 PD permit. The minor changes resulted in an addendum to the mitigated negative declaration. In addition, the previously conditioned project requirements are now applied to the new permit. So everything that was previously conditioned on the 2016 permit has now been carried over to the 2018 permit. And again, it is necessary to reapprove this entire project in order for the medical clinic project to move forward. And staff is recommending approval with the modification to phase 1. Thank you.
It's still unclear to me what the status of this encroachment is, because the diagrams you have of phase 1 indicate that the encroachment without the road is still a part of phase 1. And I think the resolution reflects that too, and your staff
No, the
report.
resolution should reflect the encroachment permit needed, but not with phase 1. It'll be required with future phasing of the project.
Well, take a look, like on page 1 of your staff report. You've got this diagram that shows phase 1 has the medical building and also this encroachment without the road.
Right. That is the way the healthcare district proposed the modification. Subsequent to this map, the Caltrans refused.
No, I understand.
Right.
I was confused.
If you would like a modified phase 1 project plan to be a part of the overall project approval, I'm certain that that the architects could do that for us.
I think that would certainly make things clearer.
For clarification. For clarification, we can have that, that approved plan not illustrating that encroachment as part of their phase 1 project.
Exhibit B to the resolution has that plan on it, including that encroachment. So, yeah, I think that would make it a lot clearer.
Okay, we can do that.
And, go ahead.
It has a figure 2 modified phase 1 that kind of shows it already.
We can change.
Well, that still
Well-
has that encroachment. You know, it doesn't
Here.
circle it.
Yeah, I
It's,
think Commissioner Laddish
Okay.
would
that's
rather
good.
that, since it's not part of the requirements for phase 1 and will not
Separate
be
it out.
built with phase 1, I agree that we probably should illustrate it as such.
Okay.
And I can have Aspen Street Architects, that would be very simple fix. They could just simply remove that, that dotted
Yeah.
dashed line around that encroachment. We could omit it from the plan. I could include that in the new resolution and bring it back for signature at the next meeting.
Then, as a heads up, I hesitate to call these changes minor. They're welcome in that they're diminishing the footprint, or not the footprint maybe, but the size of the project. But if they were going the other way, I would not consider it minor, as far as if all of a sudden they were going to do 2 stories instead
Well,
of 1 story.
right.
So I think we might have to do a little wordsmithing on the resolution and the mitigated negative declaration where it says
Well-
slight change.
But the changes are found to be minor, that they don't warrant the recirculation of the initial study and the mitigated neg deck. Therefore, the addendum is justified, and the addendum, basically, CEQA requires us to make a finding of a minor change. And there is a change, but in fact, it is minor in terms that there is no additional environmental impacts. If
I'm
any, there's
afraid
less.
of a precedent that if somebody were to start with an original plan and then double the stories on the building, and they'd say, well, when you're going the other way, it's minor, and when you're going up, it
No,
must be minor too. So I suggest that maybe we can say downsizing or less effect on the environment or something of that sort, rather than just using the term minor. Anyhow,
Okay.
we can talk
Well,
about that
that's
later.
the exact language that is reflected in the CEQA section that we worked from
Okay.
regarding the addendum.
Okay.
So-
The other thing I have is that the phase, well, there are a couple more things. Depending on which plan you're looking at, the phase 1 plan either continues to have a row of parking spaces or has landscaping. If you look at Exhibit B and Exhibit C to the resolution, Exhibit B has the dotted line for phase one with parking spaces along the, what's on this, that's the right-hand side.
Yeah, those were to serve the 7,000 square foot future retail space that's now been pushed out to a
Well,
future phase
It's-
two.
No, there's a row of spaces that went with the actual health providing building.
But you
There's a
have
row
to
of
remember
spaces-
there's less parking required. There,
That's fine.
Yeah,
All I'm
so they're
saying is,
meeting- they're-
I'm just
they're-
concerned about inconsistencies here. B is inconsistent with C. There's landscaping on C where there's a row of parking spaces on B. That's all.
Okay, so with the reduction of the medical clinic, they obviously needed less parking, less landscaping per the code. And actually, if you, from our calculations, they actually included more parking and landscaping than what they needed per the code for the modified.
So I
My
think
only
that
concern
the issue is that we've got phase one, which
Yeah.
doesn't include that row of parking. Phase two, when they come in, will remove that landscaping and add the parking area. So that's the difference between B and C, is one is phase one, they're only going to do a portion of that parking because that's what's necessary to serve that building. And then when phase two comes in, that additional parking will be added.
To the health providing center?
You have to remember, it's an entire complex. And
No,
so
I
there will be
understand. It
shared
just-
parking, and it's within an overall parking lot that serves the entire project. The parking that's provided in phase one is what's necessary to serve the first phase, the medical building. As they build out the rest of it, then additional parking is required, and that will go in that location. But what's required with phase one is just that section.
So Exhibit B is showing the area that's being separated out, and Exhibit C is showing what's actually going to be in phase one.
Well, it shows the improvements that are necessary to serve phase one. And then the other exhibit B, shows all of the improvements that will be necessary to serve the entirety of the project.
Okay. The last thing I have is, okay, looking at Exhibit C, the road that serves the parking area comes to a stub end, and the Public Works conditions say that needs to either be a cul-de-sac or a hammerhead, I think they call it, and that, again, the map is not consistent with what Public Works.
The entry into the parking area serves as the hammerhead. So that is the hammerhead turnaround. You can pull out into it, then back into the parking, and then back out the other way if you need to.
Okay. All right.
Any other commissioners have questions?
Yeah, I have one. Does this phase one touch in any way the access that currently exists from the old house? That driveway has virtually zero sight distance when you try to come in and out.
Driveway from the old house?
Upper right-hand corner of this map. I assume that's probably phase two, but I'm not sure what that would mean.
So the dashed line, the dark dashed bold line illustrates phase one. So that's just the medical clinic. The encroachment will come directly off of West Vista Del Lago.
I understand that.
Again, no encroachment out onto the highway. I'm not exactly sure where, and maybe the applicant can confirm unless Peter knows. I'm not exactly sure where the encroachment onto.
The upper right corner is what I'm talking about. There's a current driveway from the old house.
That encroachment?
Yes.
That'll be part of phase two.
So we're
That's a
not,
future phase of the project, not required with phase one.
so all we're doing today doesn't require them to open up that horrible entrance.
No,
on
you're
26.
approving the project in its entirety,
Yeah.
but the first phase of the project will not include those two encroachments out onto Highway 26, but they will be a requirement as Caltrans sees fit with the future development of those future phases.
But we're approving phase one and two today?
You're approving the entire, the entire development Future phases in terms of architecture will be reviewed in-house by the planning department. There is a condition on the permit that indicates that it has to be alike in architectural features, colorings, materials as the medical clinic. We can do that at a staff level. If there's any modifications to what is approved here, we will have to come back to you with a modification approval.
One other question. Is there any explanation as to why this thing has been reduced to this minor amount?
You'll have to ask the applicant that question.
Thank you. I will. Later. Unless he's up. Is he up?
Yeah, we'll wait until the commissioners are done with questions. You have any? No. Karen? Okay.
So as I understand it, we approve what's before us today, we may never see it again.
It's very possible that you may never see it again.
So you could have a, what is it, 7-story hotel or something that...
No, it's very specific. If you'll notice that there's square footage references on each one of these future buildings, providing you with a footprint. In addition, if there's any square footage that is beyond what is proposed and possibly approved today, they're going to have to come back in with a modification, just as they did for this building here. So if they stray from this plan,
Yeah.
somebody's going to be back before you.
And I know, I appreciate that you gave us the full-size thing. I'm not going to sort through it right now. The square footage of the hotel would encompass how many floors?
That's a 2-story building.
Okay.
I think 1,200 square feet a piece. I can't read the print. Actually, I do have my plan.
Force you to unfold everything.
I can't see that. It is a 12,000 square foot, 2-story future hotel / assembly.
Okay.
Okay? Okay. Can the applicant please come up and you can do your presentation now? Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Randy Smart, I'm the director of the Healthcare District. I appreciate your time this morning and the detail you're putting into this. There were several reasons we reduced the size of this project. Primarily, it was financial. This is being financed through a U.S. government loan, and we need to be able to service the loan. So the financial issues were probably the primary reason, but the other was related to feasibility. And when we looked at the Valley Springs market and we looked at future growth, we really weren't sure 19,000 square feet were really needed for this project. And so based on feasibility, market demand, we also downsized it. We think we're at the perfect size now. We think we'll be able to expand within this plan, within that clinic. We think we've got it exactly right now. And I apologize that we were a little robust with our first plan, but it was a vision. Happy to answer questions.
Now, there is provision for ambulance service to this, and I wasn't clear exactly on what, are there any emergency services provided, contemplated for this location?
So this is an acute care clinic that is identical to the Valley Springs clinic that exists now in terms of services provided. Now, ambulance service has access to this site, and we planned for that, but there would not normally be an ambulance station there, and it would not normally be thought of as an urgent care clinic. That would be a different licensing. So this is an acute care clinic. With appointments, walk-in type medical service.
Great.
Are there any other questions?
No.
I think it looks wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I'd like to go to public comment now. Good morning.
Good morning. Colleen Platt, oops, this is low. Colleen Platt with myvalleysprings.com. Good morning. thank you for bringing this to the agenda. We've been in support of this project for many, many years since it's been talked about in the community. One note in the staff report, it mentioned that agencies were contacted with this project when it came forward for modifications. I do want to point out that we're not an agency, but we're a special interest organization that attended all the meetings, all the public meetings, and commented extensively on the previous initial study and staff report, and we were not notified of modifications. So we would appreciate that in the future if we could be included in modifications of projects, since we were a participant in extensive comments on them before. So that's just a side note. With that said, since we do get these reports now 2 weeks ahead of the Planning Commission meetings, we had time to review all the modifications, which is great. And we are in support of the project as modified because as has been noted, the new building design is a smaller footprint and it's lower in profile, so the impacts to the environment, as Gina noted, are minor, if nothing. So that's great. The visual impact is fine. The building design also retains the previously approved architectural features, colors, everything that the community had already approved, to blend with the existing commercial buildings across the street and in the area. And this was done as a requirement of the planned development permit, which I approve anyway, in the Valley Springs area, because there are certain areas that the aesthetics of a building is very important. And this is basically the entry corridor to Valley Springs from the southern area on Highway 26. So it's an important visual area. We also note that the landscape has been increased from 3.8% to 40.9%. Some of this may convert to parking in the future, but for now that will be a significant positive impact on that corner. So again, that's a no negative impact on the environment, and we appreciate that. So with these, and the impact, updated traffic study, we do appreciate that was looked at, that there won't be an encroachment onto Highway 26 now, and so there could have been a concern with how that impacted just the remaining intersection as handling all the traffic for that. But since the building was downsized, the parking downsized, the traffic downsized, this seems to not be a concern, but we thank you for addressing that, Gina. So basically, in summary, we approve the modifications to this project and continue to support it as we always have done.
Thank you, Colleen.
Thank you.
Is there any further public comment? Okay, seeing none, I will close public comment and bring it back to the commissioners.
The revised resolution does have Exhibit A, B, and C, and I see where Exhibit A, which is the mitigation monitoring and reporting program, is identified and referred to in the resolution, but I'm unable to find a reference to B or C. And there was some confusion about what B depicted as compared to C, and whether the two were consistent, and I think it's clear on the record, but I don't know that it's clear in the resolution what B and C actually depict.
Yeah, those were, that's my fault. What I did was basically took the previous approved resolution and reapplied it completely with some slight modifications. So apparently I have missed, I thought I went through and pulled out all those references because I did change the exhibits. And that reference is where, Kelly, since you have that available to you, what page are you looking at?
Well, the problem is there aren't any references.
If I could suggest,
No.
on page 3 of 12, condition number 2-1, where it says, it describes what the approval is for, I would add at the end of that sentence, as shown on exhibits A and B, or on B and C.
But I think it would be good to describe what B is showing and what C is showing, since on their face they're inconsistent. And also, Exhibit C, need to take out the encroachment that's shown on it, as well as taking out the dotted line on B.
I will have Aspen Street modify that plan, and we'll include it in a revised resolution and bring it back for signature at the next meeting.
Also, I wonder if the resolution doesn't go through phase 1, phase 2, you know, that what the phases are, which would help explain B and C. I don't think there's any mention in the resolution of phases. I think that would be
Would you?
for anybody that's trying
would
to.
you like
Since
further
timing
clarification?
is sort of a concern here, and this is the first item on the agenda, what if we sort of provide your direction to us, we can bring back revised language that explains, you know, describes the
Right.
approval, you know, what exactly it is we're approving, phasing, that kind of stuff, and bring it back at the end of the agenda, or maybe right after lunch or something like that.
Today.
Today, bring it back today.
And while you're doing that, I am still concerned about minor changes when we're talking about.
Well,
I have no problem with the changes. It's
And
just
I
a
think
downscaling
any
change.
time you look at a proposed change, we have to make a judgment call. Is it minor? Is it something that we can say, this is minor, it really doesn't affect the overall approval, or is it significant enough? And that's the, you know, it's the opposite of significant, I suppose. And it's a struggle that every jurisdiction has with CEQA, that, you know, what is minor and what is significant, and it is always a judgment call. In this case, we've determined that a reduction of improvements is minor, and that it does not increase, you know, does not create an environmental effect.
Which I fully agree with. I'm just afraid that.
Going the other direction would not necessarily be minor. We'd have to make that call. I mean,
Right.
someone could add, you know, 10 square feet to a 100,000 square foot
But the
building, and that would be minor.
If you said downscaling, minor
Okay,
changes,
so,
that-
you know what I'd
We
like to do?
we could play with that
But
language.
the word
hopefully.
minor, though, really reflects to the fact that all the traffic is being dumped back out onto that intersection rather than having the right-in, right-out encroachment along with Phase 1. So it was determined in the previous project that it was necessary to reduce those traffic impacts to have the encroachment out on State Highway 26 with Phase 1. With the reduction in the building of the medical clinic, and the fact that Caltrans won't allow the encroachment without a connecting road, we went back and we updated the traffic analysis to determine whether or not all of that traffic impact from the medical clinic, be it reduced or not, was now going to have any kind of negative effect on the intersection.
I understand all that, and I'm really looking more at the size
So-
differences. If you were going the other way, it
I'm
wouldn't
going
be
to just
mine.
rein this in for
Okay.
just 1 second, if I can, please.
No, but I'm done, I think.
Okay, but what I'd like to
Planning
do
director, yeah.
is just poll the commissioners real quick. Do any of you want to see the word minor changed? Are you good with leaving it as it is? Let's just poll real quick so we can give direction for them at lunch.
I'm comfortable with it the way it is. It doesn't follow that, for CEQA purposes, that if a downsizing is minor, an upsizing would be too.
I understand that.
It's not
But
the
our
same
resolution, you know, I'll leave it to the planning director, do what he thinks is appropriate.
I'm okay with it the way it is.
Leave it the way it is.
I would question whether another word could be used, such as not significant.
Again, that's
You have to have the
verbatim.
word minor, is that
Yeah,
actually?
that's specific language used in CEQA. Those are findings we had to make.
But then you use the word slight when you get to the modified negative declaration instead of minor.
Would you like me to take out the word slight?
Okay.
Might as well
so
be consistent.
We're going to have the staff go back and do some corrections to the resolution, adding B and C exhibits into the resolution. Are there any other changes that the commissioners see that they would like to have noted? No?
No.
Okay. Okay.
Along with the better description of Phase 1, which excludes the encroachment.
Right, okay. So what I want to do is just poll all of you to make sure that we are all good with this, sending them back out at lunch to make those modifications to come back for approval. So you're good?
That's great.
Yes.
Yes, 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 okay.
Yes.
We got 5 yeses. Okay, then what we'll do is go ahead and direct you at lunchtime.
Trail this item. Let's make a motion to trail this item to after lunch.
Okay, can I get a
I
motion?
move to trail
Thank
this
you.
item until after lunch.
Thank you. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Okay. All right, so on that note, after lunch, we'll be voting. Okay. Going to my agenda, wherever it went. I'm going to keep rolling along here. Thank you. Item number 2016-287, appeal by Justin L. Dewaney. And I think we're going to be doing a little bit of transition here real quick. Yeah, if you could just sit there, and then we'll call you up when it's time for your appeal. Peter, do you want these big maps back to give back to them to use for their... Yeah, because if they do, I'd like to give them back instead of have that paper go bad. That was a lot. Ready, we'll let you go ahead and start.
Okay, as previously mentioned, this is 2016-287 appeal. It's the appeal planning director's denial of commercial cannabis cultivation registration 2016-287. For Justin L. Dewaney. Dewaney. Yep. And this site is located at 1978 Roan Road in Angels Camp, APN 530437. You can see here on the map. Just a little bit of background here. Code Compliance first inspected this property November 1st, 2016. They found some unpermitted hoop houses and electrical on site. Notified they need to make necessary changes. The hoop house permits were applied for, and they submitted photos showing that they removed the electrical, and as a result, Code Compliance notified planning that the site had passed their inspection that month. Going forward in the future, Code Compliance was called out for an inspection due to some complaints that following March. As a result of that inspection, they found additional unpermitted hoop houses on the site. They found that the electrical that was previously shown to have been removed had returned, and they found grading that had occurred on the property. They advised the appellant to obtain necessary permits and left it at that. The next month, they were called out again due to more complaints. A stop work order was issued due to continued grading, and Code Compliance was informed that month that an engineer had been retained and a grading permit was going to be applied for. The following month, in May, Code Compliance again inspected the site due to complaints, found that grading was still occurring, that there was still unpermitted electrical on the site, that there were trailers being used on the property for camping, that were discharging wastewater, and there's also an outdoor shower discharging wastewater. And due to these infractions, Code Compliance recommended that the application be denied. So the registration was denied later that year. And we'll go over the different violations that were cited into the denial. First is 1795-165E. That is the health and safety, that they need to ensure health and safety of employees, visitors, wildlife, and things of that nature. That was due to the hazardous electrical, the grading, and wastewater discharge. The other violation was 1795-165L. That one is the illegal camping. And so that was due to the trailers on site. Next one is 1795-170A2, and that is violations of federal, state, or local law. And that was due to the electrical, the hoop houses, the grading, and the wastewater discharge. So we'll go over these on the infraction side of things, because there are only certain infractions. It was mainly the electrical, the grading, the camping in the trailer, and the wastewater discharges. Those four things contributed to the 3 different violations of code. So we'll go over these 4 things here from the inspections. So Mr. Eldewani appealed this decision. In his appeal letter, he doesn't make any specific claims or provide any evidence for the reason for the denial, just states that he wishes to appeal the decision. And so we'll go over these infractions. So first, the hazardous unpermitted electrical on site. As you can see here, we have numerous pictures from the inspections of electrical installations being installed. Lots of cords going all over the place, being tied together with electrical tape and just kind of taped up all over the place for lighting and other reasons. Continuing on with the unpermitted grading. The grading wasn't necessarily to provide for cultivation. It was just general grading, which is why it's under the violations of local laws rather than the specific portion of the code for expansion of cultivation. But as you can see here in these areas, there was a substantial amount of grading that did occur on the property. We have pictures on the ground of this grading that occurred. And as you can see, the cut slope there on the left-hand side of this one. Lots of grading. There's a road that was cut into the side of the property to connect to another parcel. Camping in the trailers. Here's one trailer on the property. Here's another one. As you can see, it has a air conditioning unit attached to the side, showing that it was being used on a regular basis. And the wastewater discharge next to one of the trailers, there's a pit dug, and it was obviously discharging straight onto the ground. Also, there was an outdoor shower near the trailers that was being used and discharging directly onto the ground. This site is near the Brower Creek that flows directly into New Melones Reservoir. And so, in summary, the application was denied due to the inability to adhere to code through the numerous violations that I've already mentioned. Grading permit was submitted for, however, it was for the area, the cultivation area, and not all the expansions. And the electrical, it was removed in the past only to return. And obviously the discharge from the trailers and the shower shows a complete disregard for necessary environmental regulations. As a result, Staff recommends that you adopt Resolution 2018-036 to deny Appeal 2016-287 and uphold the Planning Director's determination.
You've supplied very complete evidence. It's unclear to me what attachment 5 to your report is. It shows a stop work order and then some other pictures.
Oh, that was the stop work order that was issued on the, when was that? In April of last year, when they arrived. They showed up, saw that the grading was continuing, and they posted the stop work order on the front gate.
This is Public Works or?
That is code compliance.
Code compliance, okay. And the pictures that are part of attachment 5 just show
Show what they could see from the road.
before and after, okay.
Do you have this documented as an outdoor grow or mixed light use?
It's documented as outdoor, but in the past we've let people switch over to mixed light fairly easily, so we didn't see that as a very stable reason for denial.
Did he switch his application?
He,
You did, okay.
did you? Okay.
All right.
Paul
Okay,
Grove.
okay, hold on, because we can't speak from the chair. We're going to bring you up in just a minute. Okay, is there any other commissioner questions?
Yes.
Okay.
The inspection report of May 5th, 2017 indicates insecure fence, no permit posting, and unshielded lights. Are there reasons why those weren't included as basis for denial?
Code compliance did receive evidence of correction on some of these things, and I believe fencing was one of the items where they received photographic evidence of correction. I don't recall seeing evidence of correction for the unshielded lights, though. I don't know why that would have been excluded.
Was the health or safety of any person actually affected by the hazardous electrical?
I think that's more of a general statement. When you have unpermitted electrical in an area, it is just a general hazard to anyone in the area.
Was there any actual harm to any streams, fish, or wildlife that's been documented?
It's been documented, no. However, they do drain directly to Brower Creek.
How far away is Brower Creek?
Show here, got it. You can see the, right there. So, not too far.
Well, like a quarter of a mile or 100 yards or?
I'd say a few hundred. From the edge of the graded area, a few hundred feet.
Well, from the from the trailer that was discharging waste into the ground, how far?
The trailers were in this area over here, I believe. So, I don't know.
Is there any evidence any of this discharge actually reached the creek?
No direct evidence, no.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions from the commissioners? You go ahead and bring the applicant up. Okay. Good morning.
Thank you.
And I seen you correct how your name was being said.
It's Justin Eldawani.
Thank you.
And to respond to where the trailer was positioned, it was right. You see the apex of the oval on the left-hand side?
Yes.
It's right about there, to the left. Yeah, right about there. And you know, I apologize for that, and also for the unpermitted grading. In response to that, I was unaware that removing brush and other types of, fire hazards were deemed illegal grading. And so for that, you know, I didn't realize that that is it considered illegal grading to remove buckbrush and manzanita?
Do you move any soil?
I don't believe so. Okay, and secondly, to address the stop work order, I communicated with Planning Director Peter Maurer that that no grading had occurred since May of 2016, and that our tractor had, you know, that we were using to remove fire hazard was broken down months before the stop work order. So in response to them considering that I was continuing to disobey the law, that is incorrect. As for the rest of the findings, I have prepared a short statement. And you know, the purpose of my appeal isn't to dispute some of these findings, but to show that, you know, I have made some type of progress. You know, corrections were made and submitted to code compliance and planning department before even being communicated of these wrongful things. You know, Gina or any other planning department employee would recognize my face, including Scott, who I've spoke to on several occasions, to make sure that my application was, you know, as thorough and as complete as it possibly could, and that, you know, I'm here to work with you guys and not against you. You know, this appeal may seem pointless in light of the county's January 2018 ordinance banning commercial cannabis cultivation. While adhering to the new ordinance, my purpose for this appeal is to receive your conditional approval that for the old application, particularly since any future applications would involve new inspections, your conditional approval would allow me to state on future applications for cultivation that I would be granted a conditional approval. To my knowledge, the state gives priority to licensees and permits to those who have received prior approval for cultivation anywhere in the state. In fact, applicants who have been denied or prior applicants who have been treated with suspicion or sometimes with unreasonable demands delaying the application process. Since there are so many applicants going through Cal Cannabis to consider, it is tempting for an authorizing agency to deny an applicant for the slightest excuse. And that is the reason I'm here today for this appeal, is you know, to kind of expunge this from my record and to continue to be able to cultivate in California as a cultivator outside of Calaveras. Thank you.
Your statement is exemplary.
Thank you.
But we have this evidence of direct dumping of sewage from illegal camping into the ground.
Sorry to cut you off, Tim.
That's one thing, and it just seems totally contrary to what you just said. That and apparent reestablishment of illegal electrical connections after once you've been caught and taken them down, putting them back up. I don't see how either of those could possibly be inadvertent or slight violations. They're shocking.
Tim, can I respond?
Yes.
Thank you. In response to the sewage, I had porta potties established on the property, so no sewage was being dumped on the ground except for water from the sink in the inside of the. If you consider shower gray water sewage, then you are correct. But if you consider gray water from a shower or from a sink to be considered sewage, you know, I can't convince you of the otherwise. And as for the electrical, there was an extension cord that was going about 500 feet from my shed where the electricity was, and I thought that was the reason for the connection. In my drawings for my hoop houses, I drew in the electrical lines and put in conduit as well as a sub-panel in order to provide electricity for my mixed light use.
But it wasn't permitted, right?
It was, to my understanding, the 14 hoop houses were granted permits, and I was able to show where all the electrical lines were feeding and how I was doing it. And
You understood, did you have a permit in your hand that permitted these electrical connections?
if you consider the permit for the 14 hoop houses with drawings of where the lights and the fans and the electrical connections are, then yes.
And were you aware of the illegality of the camping, the rather permanent camping that you had going on the property?
As for the camping, I apologize for that, and I would like to make a statement that I had sent the planning director and Sabrina, the code enforcement officer, pictures of the removal of those units.
So until you were caught, you were in violation. Then you were caught, and then they found that you were in violation again of the electrical problems. You didn't understand the first time around what was wrong with the electrical connections? Is that what I understand?
Yeah, my understanding was that the electrical cords, the part that was not deemed permissible, was the fact that I had almost 300 to 400 foot extension cord going from a place that was really far away to the hoop houses, and that was my understanding to the extent of the electrical problem. And once again, Tim, I apologize, and curing and correcting was, evidence of that was provided to both code compliance as well as planning department. Thank you.
On this, it states that you had 3 hoop house permits, and you just said you had 14 hoop houses?
So to correct Karen, there's been a big misunderstanding between both the tax assessor, the planning department, the building department, and myself. The discommunication or the discord between all 4 departments has been driving me insane, because I'm getting tax assessed on 3 when I actually had 14, and then they're no longer established because they were temporary. The discord between the 4 departments has been really frustrating for me, because where some department might think that I have 3 hoop houses, when in fact I had drawings and approval from the building department for 14. The previous 3 were for the first hoops that I built, and I removed those and built new ones because they were inefficient, and I thought that I could do better.
So when you removed them and when you removed the first 3 and you built 14, did you go back to planning to get a permit for the 14?
Yes. No, not planning, to building.
I mean building, you're correct. Did you go back to the building department and get a permit to build 14 hoop houses?
Yes.
Do we have proof of that?
I don't have any record of that.
So when I first filed my appeal, I walked the 10 steps that it took to get to the building department and pulled my file, and there it was with a stamp on it.
Okay.
Where is it?
Do we have a copy of that? Can we get a copy of that?
I just was texting with Mr. Watts. He's on his way back from an inspection right now. I think there's enough information here to, if you guys want that information, it can be provided. Thomas is on his way back from a field inspection right now. However, I believe there's enough evidence here to deny the application or the appeal, regardless of whether or not we inquire into that. And if I may, I would also like to address quickly the issue of the electricals. Mr. Dewaney or an agent of his submitted proof of correction of those, and it didn't include only an extension cord. It included the dismantling of subpanels, in 2 locations on the property, which were subsequently reinstalled. So there's no way that anyone ever believed that it was just an extension cord issue.
What SEP panels?
Unfortunately, we don't have access to the planning drive right now, otherwise I could pull up the photos. I was looking at them in my office this morning. There was one in the middle of your grow field that was emerging from the ground. You submitted photos of a trench being refilled that had contained conduit.
Oh, that one? Yes. I mean, I did not show any pictures of that being dismantled.
Okay, then.
Okay.
So when did you say your tractor broke down?
You know, I provided evidence. I can, if you would allow me to turn on my cell phone and go back in my records, I have a picture with a date stamp on it that I forwarded to Peter Maurer. And I believe it was sometime around April, like I want to say March something, March 20th, March 15th, somewhere around there.
Of 2016?
2017. The tractor was used for brush removal.
Can I ask a question or two?
Yes.
I
don't know if it's my...
Scott, if you could go back to I think there's 4 pictures showing the grading. Well, maybe there's more than 4.
That was done in 2016, the previous picture. Yes.
Do we have those? That looks different.
Yeah.
One I'm looking at starts out with a very large stump in the center of the picture.
No.
Not that stuff.
No.
This one?
I got the right appeal. I don't even remember seeing those pictures.
I think that was a different
Those
appeal.
are different pictures
That
than
was-
we have.
Yeah, I included more pictures in the report and presentation. Yeah, I see the one you're talking about.
Oh, yeah, I recognize this photo.
And that appears to show you've cut into the hillside and you've cut at least one tree with a pretty substantial size to it. And you say that's just grading the brush, is that all that was?
That was previously done in 2016 for purposes of erosion control.
I'm not looking at this picture.
Yeah, I know. I'm looking at the picture right now through Scott. Yeah, I can see it. I know exactly where that is. And that was used as protection from erosion on my highly valued pad.
But
So when did you do that erosion control on that particular picture?
I believe it was 2016 and
When in 16?
May 10th, I believe it was prior to May 10th.
Was that a convenient date or is that actually when you did it?
May 3rd was the day of the picture that was submitted for
Look at these
grading.
other pictures that show the dirt that's been scraped away. When did
That dirt is compost. That is compost.
All of, not the pile, the whole
That
thing.
big pile of dark.
The entire picture.
Oh, the entire picture.
All of that bare dirt, when was that scraped?
Scraped, you know, when we were building the 14 hoop houses, it was important to mitigate a lot of the weeds and the a lot of the barriers, so that when we were bringing in tools and equipment, that we could do so properly. And
Scott, can you show another picture of that grading? Yeah, all right. And what about that picture? When was that done?
I believe prior to April, in March of 2017.
But after June of 16.
Yes.
Next picture. Another.
This was done by my...
All right, how about that one, showing excavator, when was all that scraping, as you've called it?
prior to March 29th, 2017, and after the May 10th of 2016.
And you claim that's showing scraping of brush only and not grading as such?
That area was previously without any brush, and in the back portion,
I don't have any more questions.
Sorry. Thank you.
Do you have any questions?
Yes. The staff report says that on May 5th of 2017, code compliance found a new road graded out between your property and a neighboring property.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
And when was that road graded?
I couldn't tell you, sometime in March of 2016 or 17. And, you know, just for the record, you know, evidence has been provided by a neighboring parcel owner who took complete ownership of doing so without my permission. And so that has been recorded in both the code compliance as well as the building and the planning department.
Then the staff report goes on to say that there were new plans submitted to Public Works on September 21, 2017.
Correct.
But it says plans for the additional grading performed on the parcel were not included in the new application. These areas included parking areas near the house, a graded pad of approximately 22,000 square feet south of the cultivation area,
That is not a pad.
a road that goes from the cultivation area to the south pad, and a
That
road
has always existed.
let me finish, and a road that connects the cultivation area to a neighboring cultivation site 2 parcels away. Were those areas in fact graded?
The bottom circle, which is what he is referring to as the additional 22,000 square feet of area, that I had removed the brush from and no grading had occurred, as well as the road that connects my cultivation pad to that circled area. That road, as you can see on the previous picture, had always existed, and as well as the road that connects the neighboring parcel to my parcel, that had not been established prior to June 3rd of 2016. Somewhere around March of 2017, that is when a neighboring owner had, who I had contracted to remove the brush on my property, had done so.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Any further questions? Okay, I'm going to have you sit down for just a moment and see if we've got any public comment. Is there anybody that would like to make public comment on this appeal? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and see if you have any rebuttal on this.
What about the gray water comments? Oh, Scott, you need to turn on your mic.
Thank you.
Thank you. As far as gray water, wastewater discharge is concerned, whether it's actual sewage from a toilet or if it's gray water from a sink or shower, they are under the same requirements that you need to have proper disposal of such, that you need to have a septic system on site to accommodate, of which there was not any on site nor was any applied for.
We're going to come back to you in just a moment.
And as far as the electrical, it is the department's continued position that the applicant did submit correction photos that indicated that he was correcting things other than just the extension cord.
Correction photos were submitted to the extent that it satisfied all concerns code compliance had, and that they recommended, that they stated that the site then passed inspection.
But
So
did that include more than extension cords?
Correct.
That was on the first inspection. What about the
Yes,
second one?
November 2016. As far as any further inspections, when they came back, there was more electrical on the site. So
It's a fair summary to say that there were problems with the electrical, they were corrected, that the code compliance noted that things had been taken down and corrected, and then at a later inspection, they were back up, but there was no permit for those?
Correct.
And what about the claim that, well, the electrical permit, the electrical connections were shown on plans that went to Public Works, and therefore they were in effect permitted?
To my knowledge, the hoop houses that were applied for were shown to not have electrical.
On the plans that were...
Correct.
Now, if they had shown electrical on the Public Works submittal, then would that have constituted an electrical permit as well if the hoop houses were permitted?
I believe so.
If the plans for the hoop houses showed electrical, had the electrical wiring, electrical diagram, then that would have been a fully permitted, as long as, all of the electrical connections that were made were shown on the plans, either whether separate electrical plans or as a part of any structure. So that would be something that would be necessary.
Mr. Watts is now present. He was courteous enough to show up on extremely short notice, and he can address what he saw on the site if you like. Would the commission like to ask any questions?
I do want to ask him some questions, but I think what I want to do is let the commissioners finish their questions,
Okay,
and that way when Mr. Watts comes up, he will have an idea and be able to be filled in a little bit.
Has there ever been a grading permit issued?
Not to my knowledge. There was a grading permit applied for, and it was reviewed. And the initial grading permit that was applied for passed the initial planning review because it was for the area for cultivation, but the additional areas were not shown on that site.
So there was no grading permits for the road or any of the other grading shown in the aerial image that Scott showed earlier?
And what is your position regarding the claim that the additional grading shown on your Exhibit 7 was not grading at all, just brush clearance?
To me, the pictures shown from code compliance definitely show that grading did occur.
And those pictures of code compliance included those additional areas that were shown in your Exhibit 7?
Correct.
Okay, are there any other commissioner questions?
No.
Would you like me to go ahead and bring Mr. Watts up now?
Please.
Okay. And you'll get a chance to rebuttal. Thank you. Good morning.
Morning.
So I know that Karen has a specific question, and I have the same one because you asked it, so go ahead.
I just want, on the initial paperwork, it said that there was 3 of the hoop houses, and then he stated that there was 14.
Mm-hmm.
There was electrical in all 14 hoop houses. Was there a permit for it?
I don't have that information on hand, but we can find that out if you need to. I haven't had a chance to review the notes, but maybe it's included there in the staff report.
Planning didn't have any indication of the 14 hoop houses being permitted, but the appellant says they were, and that it was in the building department.
We can certainly check the system if we have the opportunity to.
Okay. Do you guys want to take a quick break? Or does it?
Time anyway, yes.
I think I had asked Mr. Diamond to go to the building department to see if he could research what permits had been issued for that parcel, and I think it sounded like he might have that information for us.
Yes, I checked with the building department, and there were 3 hoop house without electrical permits and 1 hoop house B permit, which is a hoop house with electrical. So there was 1 permit for a hoop house with electrical.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions of Mr. Watts? I think, Mr. Watts, we have an issue of looking at some photos on the grading. If you want to flip through those real quick, just so we can refresh his memory. He's indicating that there was no grading, that it was brush removal.
I mean, you can see on the left here that there's quite a decent bank that's being produced there. And certainly there are whole trees that have been uprooted, piles of dirt around the edges of the property. I would say it constitutes grading rather than simple brush clearing.
But is this the cultivation area, or is this the area around the cultivation area?
This particular photo seems to be the area around the cultivation area. I think the first time we went out there, the cultivation area had already been graded at some point or flattened off. Yeah, so that other photo shows those other areas on the right-hand side there in the red circles.
Okay. Are there any other commissioner questions?
Chair, if you don't mind, I have one question for him.
Sure.
Mr. Watts, the appellant indicated that the only issue that was of note, as far as you're concerned, regarding electrical was an extension cord. Is that your recollection?
No, I don't think so.
Do you want to elaborate on what other electrical violations you might have seen on the property?
To be honest with you, I can't quite remember without going through my notes again. But certainly, yeah, electrical like this is not up to code.
We've seen sub-panels sticking up out of the ground is one of the concerns. That.
Yeah, certainly a panel like that would require a permit. It's hard to tell there. It appears to be in conduit and stuff, which is safer. But without the permit, then it still isn't up to code.
There is a permit?
I don't know if there is a permit, no. I'm just saying that without a permit, it still wouldn't be up to code.
Even with one that's not?
It could be. I'm not that well trained in electrical.
Okay. 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 If there's no further commissioner comments, I'll bring the repellent back up for rebuttal.
Perhaps if we may, before Mr. Eldewani, I'd like to just clarify a statement that he made that, yes, I have had numerous conversations with him at the counter and on the phone. He did indicate that he had been doing some brush removal, but that was before I had a chance to see any of the photographs that had been taken by code compliance. You know, I did not at any time say that this was okay. I just want to make that clear.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to say something about the panel. That was done by a licensed electrician.
With a permit?
My understanding was that when I got the permits for the 14, not one greenhouse, the 14 greenhouses which were drawn to scale, submitted to the building department, included the panel as well as all of the conduit running to each greenhouse, as well as all the lights inside of the greenhouse, as well as the fans inside the greenhouse.
And when was that submittal compared to the pictures we've seen of the violations?
They were submitted, I want to say, sometime in April.
2017?
2017, correct.
Okay, so the burden of proof is on you to bring to us so that we can, you know, take that evidence and make a ruling. I don't have a permit from you showing me 14 hoop houses. I don't have a grading permit. I don't have an electrical permit. So
is an electrical permit separate from the hoop house permits?
I have nothing, though. I mean, it would be upon you to give us that proof to show us that you did all of those things. So, I mean, it's very complicated for us when we don't have proof. And then what the county has on record is 4 hoop houses with 1 allowed to have electrical. So I guess what I'm looking for from you is evidence to prove to us that this is what has been done.
Okay.
And I'd point out that this has been continued from an earlier date, which gives you even more opportunity to present your case, and we don't see any proof.
I apologize.
No. Okay, do you have anything further that you would like to state into the record?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Have a nice day.
Okay, I'm going to close the hearing, bring it back to the commissioners for deliberation. Anybody want to start?
Yeah, I'll start.
Okay.
It seems to me that the evidence shows several code violations, and I don't think they've been rebutted. The unpermitted electrical, the grading, and it's, from the photos that I see, it's not just removing brush, it includes creating banks, making roads. None of that was permitted. The wastewater, I think, is a violation. And the camping, there's no rebuttal to the camping, which is an urgency ordinance violation. I am not convinced that there is evidence of any actual effect on anybody's safety, where anybody was hurt because of the electrical. And I'm not convinced that there was any actual harm to any streams, fish, or wildlife. But I do believe that the same evidence shows the code violations.
I actually don't think that he had a strong enough case to rebut anything county said. So there's obvious electrical. He took it down once, put it back up. The permit that Ben brought to us, or that Ben went and looked and he said the permit was for one hoop house. I don't see any other proof saying that there was 14, so I agree with county on this one.
I concur. The applicant has not given us any evidence. He's given us words, but he hasn't brought the case to us. Sorry, this is your trial date. And if that's your evidence, I have to concur entirely with the county's position.
And I certainly agree with the other commissioners as far as the violations. I would point out that these sort of provisions are there to protect the public health and to protect fish and wildlife and to protect the environment. And they are there because these sort of violations can lead to such harm. And I'm not saying that Commissioner Wooster says that we have to show such harm. It's just that there are clear violations here, and even though it's immaterial, they are good protective provisions, and I would affirm the denial of the permit.
Okay, so at this point, I think I'm ready for a reading of the resolution, unless there's going to be any changes to it that you want to document. You want to make some changes? Okay.
Well, with respect to the resolution, there's a technical change I would like to see on the fourth whereas clause, where it reads, whereas the proposed project is located on real property in the unincorporated portion of the county of Calaveras, more particularly described as APM 53-437, lies in the southwest quarter. Should be a comma after 037 and strike the word lies. And my view is that finding number one has not been proven, because to violate section 17.95.165E, I think you have to conduct your operation in such a way as to actually affect the health and safety of employees, et cetera. And there's been no showing that there's been any effect. And you have to conduct your operation to protect the environment from harm. Not just protect the environment, but protect it from harm to streams, fish, and wildlife. And I don't think there's any showing of that. What I would do is I would delete finding number one. And I would take the evidence that supports finding number one and place it down in what is now finding number three, because it does support the code violations. And in doing that, I would strike the second and last sentences from the evidence under finding number one and simply leave in the factual statements. That's my view on the resolution.
If I could speak to that, I would keep finding number one, because the ordinance is there to ensure the health and safety of employers and to protect the environment from harm. That's exactly what they were doing here, and there was a violation of that. There's no burden of proof on the planning department that there was actual damage to health or safety or damage to the environment. this is the whole purpose of these sort of things, is to protect them, to ensure, and I see nothing in the ordinance that requires that actual harm be established.
I agree. I don't think actual harm has to be shown. It's just the threat. The actions that ensure or don't ensure the health and safety are pretty clear, and I would leave the language as it is, as it was proposed by staff.
Commissioner Sisk?
I agree. I think we should leave it.
Okay. Then, if we're going, we got three polled here to leave it. I would like to have you read the resolution, please.
We're still amending that fourth whereas clause, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Staff recommends that you adopt Resolution 2018-036 as amended, denying 2016-287 appeal, upholding the planning director's determination to deny 2016-287.
Thank you. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Would you like to advise him of his right to appeal?
So this action is final unless it's appealed to the Board of Supervisors within 15 calendar days.
And we are going to take a 10-minute break, please. Something really important. I was on my campaign.
You just turned it off.
You want it on? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we will bring the meeting back to order. Is Mr. Curvello here? Can I just speak with you for just 2 seconds? Appeal number 5, Charnel has, nope, can't do it, okay.
I also have a
Okay, that's all I just needed to want to clear it with you first. Thank you. Do you want to let her know that we just have this hearing and he's got a court date as well? Okay.
Do you want to announce that number 3's already been finished also?
Sure. Okay, so number 3 was removed from the agenda because it has been resolved, so we're going to go to item number 4 on the agenda, which is 2016-566, and Ben, we're ready.
Yes, this is Appeal 2016-566 by Ronnie Curvello on behalf of Superfire Wellness Farm. This application was denied for failing to satisfy section 1795-165A2A, which requires that if the contact information for the registrant change at any point during the registration period, they notify the planning department and provide the new information in writing within 72 hours of the change occurring. Give a little timeline on the events that led to the denial. On October 23rd, 2017, the planning department received a letter from Danny Bryden, the original individual who submitted the application on behalf of Superfire Wellness Farm. This letter was his resignation from the company, and on February 20th, 2018, a corporate resolution from Superfire Wellness Farm was given to the planning department that confirmed that Bryden had been removed and authorized Mr. Curvello to sign documents on behalf of the corporation. A statement of information for Superfire Wellness Farms was included with this resolution, and it listed Mr. Curvello as the only director in the company and also had the same address as was listed on the registration form. And no other information was supplied to the department at that time. On February 28th, 2018, the planning department identified some deficiencies in the application and came to the realization that we no longer had a individual to contact because Mr. Bryden had resigned and we were not given new contact information from Mr. Curvelo. So the planning staff called Mr. Bryden to see if he had a number for Mr. Curvelo. He gave staff a number, but when they called on February 28th, it went directly to a not set up voicemail. And on March 3rd, when they tried to call again, it also went directly to the same not set up voicemail. On March 5th, staff sent a mailer to the address listed on the statement information, noting that it was the same as the address given on the registration form. However, this letter was returned undeliverable and unable to forward on March 12th. And on March 19th, staff once again tried to call the Mr. Curvelo, but instead of no voicemail, it just went directly to the Verizon Payment Center because that account had been suspended. And as the letter had been returned, staff noticed that a January 23rd, 2018 letter that was sent to the same address but without the unit number included in it was received and signed for, so staff once again tried to send the missing requirements letter to the registrant. However, on March 27th, 2018, that letter was once again returned as undeliverable and unable to forward. At this point, the planning department didn't have any means to contact the registrant as all of the letters had been returned and none of the calls were successful. And at that point, it was apparent that a change in contact information had occurred and we were not notified within the 72 hours that is required. And as a result, it was denied.
The denial letter of April 5th, 2018 was sent and apparently received because you got an appeal.
The denial letter was also returned undeliverable. The appellant was made aware of the denial when they came to the counter, and luckily it was within the appeal period.
So and at that point, did Mr. Covello provide you with a new mailing address, or did he say it's the same mailing address he's always had, that the organization has always had?
When the appeal was filed, a 603 South Highway 49, number 270 was given, and that is different than the original mailing address.
And have you read the brief that's been submitted by the appellant? And does it appear to you that the problem might be with the U.S. Postal Service and this, the mailbox service, whatever you call the
It may be, but the brief also confirms that a change in address did occur, and even though there was a supposedly forwarding supposed to be happening, it wasn't, and now that the appellant uses a new mailing address, that further evidence is a change that if we had been told about, we could have sent mail and this wouldn't have happened.
So the fault may not be with Mr. Covello, the fault might be with the people he has contracted with to provide mail service for.
Well, the code section also specifically requires a new phone number, and the brief doesn't address that, and that was never provided.
Mm-hmm. The Secretary of State form, when was that was received? Let's see, the one we have is December 19th, 2016, and that's showing Ronnie Covello as the Chief Executive Officer and agent for service, and that, I guess, does not have a telephone number on it, but has the address that's on the application.
That's correct.
Okay.
I've got a question. The staff report refers to attachment 6, page 2, as showing that the March 5th letter was returned, but I don't see it there. What I see is the March 19th letter being returned, and the April 5th letter being returned, but I don't see any proof that the March 5th letter was returned.
Yes, I was realized yesterday as I was going through the report that that was not as clear as it could have been. The March 19th letter was the March 5th letter. It's just the same letter sent again. And I should have included the March 12th envelope. That was the first time the letter was sent on March 5th. It came back on March 12th and then was resent.
So there were 3 letters
Correct.
that were sent and returned as non-deliverable.
Correct. The missing
Or-
requirements letter was sent twice and the denial letter was returned.
Okay.
Okay, if you're done with your questions, I'd like to bring the appellant up and his representative. That'd be you.
Good morning,
Good morning.
Madam Chair, Mr. Director, Commission, Clerk, Council. Nice to see it. I'm here with Mr. Carvello. So thank you for reading and considering the brief. As stated therein, the address has never changed. He does that virtual physical location did change office space. However, under agreement with all of their tenants, I guess we'd call them, that they will continue to accept mail. They changed around January, but under agreement with their tenants, they'll accept and receive mail at the 805 address for 6 months. That brings us to July. There's no arguing that mail service has been spotty at best. Can't explain why some letters make it through, some don't. Mr. Cavello brought with him today one from January, one from February, one from March, all to the 845 address, all that were received by him at the 840 address of this year, so that it appears that that virtual office is somewhat effective and somewhat ineffective. As a result, he does have that secondary address, but he still, for all intent and purposes, retains the 845 address until July 1st. Certainly would be more efficient to cut out the forward and terminate the use of the 845 address, which might be prudent to do at this point. Nonetheless, it is still effective. He still retains that. If you want to take a look at these letters, they're postmarked and made it through to the 845 address.
And those are letters from people other than the
Other
county.
companies.
Yep.
PG&E, Campora,
State Franchise Board.
On the box,
Water Board.
on this 845 box, who rented that box?
Me.
It's in your name?
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Superfire Wellness.
Superfire Wellness.
And
Super Fire Wellness, but was it
And
rented
Mr.
by you?
And my name also is.
That's
on
what I
there.
wanted to know, is your
Yeah,
name
my
on there?
official. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay, so on the appeal form, you're using 603.
I think on my direction, rather than continue to use that forwarding service as provided by the same company, I've recommended that let's just use the 645.
And did you do a change of address within the county, the planning department?
We have not, because he technically still maintains both.
You mean 845?
845.
845, yes. Okay, can we see those envelopes?
Yes, sure.
Give them to Annette, please.
While we're looking at those, Mr. Molinelli, are you aware of the Planning Commission procedures requirements for filing of briefs?
I do. It's my understanding that the brief is to be filed the Tuesday before the hearing.
No, maybe you better read them. Because
I read it
it's
specifically.
end of Monday.
Golly, I specifically pulled it up off the
I
internet.
think you'll find it's the end, at 5 o'clock on Monday.
How is that?
I don't know.
I believe,
You
yeah.
and, you
no,
and I will go back and check our own stuff, but, you know, especially with your office, I expect everything to be.
Absolutely, and
Yeah.
I swear, I went specifically again, because I know you updated them around 2017, and I went back again to take a look, and I was certain that I saw the Tuesday before.
Anyhow, that being said, I read your brief.
My apologies, thank you, it was a short one.
And so you think it's with that virtual office that's the problem, or the postal service, or just sometimes one, sometimes the other?
I think it has to be, well, maybe a combination, but I would, seems more likely that the virtual office, for whatever reason, is failing his promise. Still maintains that physical address.
And what,
can't explain it.
what about the county's charge that the phone number has to be kept up to date?
Right, so where Mr. Curvello at the physical cultivation site is horrific service, has had and maintained the phone. At the point in time where it was disconnected for lack of payment, he corrected that. But I think we have to admit to you in all candor that because of the horrific service, he has recently changed his phone number and has not updated planning with that. And that is something that he will do today. So in that respect, don't want to mislead you. But that number has recently been changed, I think, outside of 72 hours, a little bit longer than that. With respect to that, I would beg upon this commission to exercise discretion under the doctrine of substantial compliance, where substance over form, all else, go and see the presentation of the last appellant is a good segue for Mr. Curvello, and a segue into the substantial compliance doctrine. He's a model cultivator, very caring, very conscientious, and it's in that vein that we have to admit that technically we may have not submitted a new phone number within that 72-hour period.
How long ago did you change his phone number?
Last month.
So,
Sorry, last month.
Do
so
you still
well
have
over
that other phone
72
number?
hours.
I have the other phone. No, it's been disconnected. I mean, I let it just get disconnected. I have a new one, and I'll surely provide it to you guys.
What prompted you to come into the planning department?
Excuse me?
What prompted you to come into the planning
Because I was trying
department
to see
since you
what
had
was-
not received any notices?
I was trying to see what was the status on my application. I was trying to see if I already got approved or like I was. basically
So
trying
it
to see the
wasn't that you were
status.
coming in to update your address and phone number?
No, I was just curious to see, you know, how did I get it or not.
Okay. Okay, do you have any other questions, or do you want to go to public comment? You have questions?
Yes. So if I got it right, you did get a letter that was sent January 23rd of this year?
From the planning department?
Yes.
Do you recall that?
I don't recall, but about what? I'm sorry?
Well, the planning department's report says they sent a letter dated January 23rd to the 845 East Highway 88 address, and it was not returned as
The
undeliverable.
one that made it through.
If it made it through, then I did receive it.
Okay, but then there were apparently 3 letters that were sent that did not, that were returned as non-deliverable. March 5, March 19, and April 5. Is that correct?
Correct. I didn't.
Okay,
receive
now
it.
when did the virtual, whatever it is, the service change its address?
I believe it was sometime in January.
Okay, why did you not submit a change of address form at that time?
Well, because the other address was still valid, and I was that owner of that company. He was like in a back and forth type thing.
with his moving. He's an elderly person, and it's
So if I'm understanding this correct, the address changed, but your position is that since there was a contractual agreement from the owner of the service to continue to forward mail to you, if sent to the old address, therefore there really wasn't a change in address for purposes of the urgency ordinance.
And if, I'm sorry to interrupt, but, and I know in speaking that, I think the reason he did it was for continuity. He thought he had to maintain that same address, and Fortunate was able to, the 845.
Well, one of the problems is though that we had 3 letters go out that were fairly important and they didn't get there.
Agreed, yeah,
I
that,
received other letters also from other companies.
Could you be a little closer to the mic, please?
Sorry. I mean, I was receiving other mail from other companies and everything also through that same address also. So I didn't figure that there was a problem with anything else.
What was the reason you just didn't rent a post office box?
Because down in Bald Mountain, there's no delivery all the way down.
Well, West Point has a post office, doesn't it?
Yes,
Why not just rent a post office there?
it's just convenient for me down there in Jackson. Since I'm always
And-
having to
and-
buy groceries and everything down there, might as well just keep it on.
Who selected the Jackson virtual office service? Was that you?
Me, I just Googled private mailboxes and that popped up.
So the letter that they were trying to mail to you on January 23rd speaks about Measure C taxes. Have you brought those current?
Sorry,
The letter on January 23rd was about Measure C taxes. Did you bring that current?
you paid all your taxes.
oh yeah, I paid all my taxes.
Okay.
I have stamps and proof still.
Okay.
Do you have any proof that you were getting other mail at the same time that these were being sent back?
That's what we
Yes, I
just looked
provided-
at right
I
here.
provided that.
But those are dated at the same time, is what I'm asking.
It was in the
That's,
same
I did
period.
think to look to see.
Yeah,
if
it was
they were-
March, it was,
February, March.
yeah.
This
Yeah, it's
year,
different months.
December, I see that's 2017.
I'm sure I have way more that I could provide.
So there's something dated in March and in April in there?
There was a date of February 20th, 2018, March 12th, 2018, December, the rest of the date is torn off.
The only reason I ask is because if you don't pay your box fees, you don't have a box. If
No,
it was
those
suspended
are there.
For the time, that's what I wanted to make sure, because these were dated in April and in March 19th. So I wanted to see.
Yeah, I was looking and it was March.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to see, that if it
Um,
was paid.
So when Danny Bryden wrote the letter resigning and you taking over, he doesn't reference you in this letter as taking over. In his letter, it says, "Dear Calaveras County Planning Department, my name is Danny Bryden, and I'm listed as a registered cultivator in your county under Surefire Wellness Farm."
Because I'm Super Fire Wellness Farm. Like to this day, I'm.
Okay, so it's all under you, so
Yeah.
him resigning has nothing to do with it.
No,
What was his position in this?
he was the cultivator. I thought that the cultivator was the one that had to do the registration and everything. That's why he was the one that.
Okay, but you hold the corporation.
I'm the owner of the whole.
Okay, okay.
And it does show in your corporate resolution, it shows you as the only signee, so apparently
Yeah.
the board of directors, the president, and whatever else you might be.
Madam Chair, just an observation. The 3 letters that we attempted to deliver that were returned were all certified mail. The ones that received, and I'm assuming the one we sent in January was not certified, as I recall.
That letter was certified.
That was certified also?
Yeah.
Okay. So I was thinking that it might be a difference that
I
the
understand what you're
private
saying.
mailbox, but there was a received certified letter. Okay.
Okay.
Never mind.
Do you have anything further you want to state, or you want us to take some public comment and,
Nothing further?
okay, all right, thank you.
Appreciate your time.
You guys were done with questions, huh? Okay. Is there anybody in the public that has anything they'd like to state on this appeal? No? Okay, seeing none, I will close public comment. Do you have any rebuttal?
I do not.
Okay, you're good. And you obviously have no rebuttal because nothing was said. Okay. All right, so bringing it back to the commissioners. That was a tough one.
Kind of. He had me for a minute there with the mail, because I understand how mail can get. But the phone, he changed his phone number over a month ago. And so he's still in violation.
I do have a question of the department. We've never had code compliance check out this property. We have no indication that it's a model property or anything other than a model property.
Compliance has been to this property.
Yeah.
And it appears that they passed their site inspection.
They passed the section, okay? So we do have an indication that
It's at least up to code.
up to code. They don't have a grade for model or... Okay.
Okay. I'm processing this one in my mind because the address is the address of the corporation. It's the same address it's always been. Just because the cultivator resigned didn't mean anything changed hands. So he had no need to come in and update an address. It was under the corporation's address. The phone number last month canceled out. That I understand, but that's not what the appeal is about today. It was about his address and returned mail, and he's proving to us today that mail was and has been delivered at that address.
I think it's pretty clear the error was not his.
I think so, too.
I don't see a problem.
And I think this is... Oh,
Can I
sorry.
just for a second, you know?
Please, a minute.
I don't like to say
Do
a
I-
lot, but
I'm gonna sit between you guys. Hold on.
I don't think the telephone number is a problem. I suspect there are many people out there who changed phone numbers and haven't told us. The address thing, I think, was the mailbox company's error. I'd like to uphold his appeal or have planning rescind.
All I have to say is I fully concur with the comments of Commissioner Bocelli.
Commissioner Wooster's scratching his head. Any further comments down there?
Well, one of the questions is, what does the urgency ordinance mean when it says, should the registrant's mailing address change during the registration period? And I guess we start off with a virtual office service that has an agreement to accept mail on behalf of the registrant. And then that office changes its address, but apparently the agreement remained in effect until January 1 to continue to accept and forward mail. So it gets a little complicated because, as is apparent now, that agreement wasn't always kept. And so the ability of the planning department to actually have its mail delivered was in fact affected by the change of address of the virtual office. Obviously, 3 letters never got there. But I think on balance that, I think I'm prepared to say that for purposes of the urgency ordinance, the effective mailing address did not change. It was always a matter of contract, and the contract remained in effect. It just wasn't abided by the virtual office as it should have been. The phone number's a different animal because, I mean, they've been consistently unable to reach the applicant on the phone.
I
And had they been able to do so, this whole matter might have been avoided. And I'm not sure I see a satisfactory reason for not keeping a phone number up to date that somebody could actually reach you. Understanding it, the service may be horrific up at the cultivation site, but you have to have some phone number where somebody can reach you. So I'm not too sure how I come out on that one.
I would point out on that that certainly the staff report, which is what the notice for this hearing is concentrates on the mailing problems and not the phone problems. I agree that the ordinance does provide that the phone number change needs to be reported. I think this is, as far as the mailing goes, this is a very different situation than when people come and say, well, I was in San Diego and my cultivator did this and did that and I wasn't aware of that, so let me go. I think Mr. Gavello had every right to rely upon the contracts he had with the mail service to follow its contract.
If I could add to my previous comments, I think not notifying us of a phone number to me sounds more like very similar to other violations that we've allowed to go through. If a gate isn't exactly done correctly, we allow people to correct it. Various things can be corrected. And this is a discretionary violation. It's not a mandatory denial. So I think in light of council's representation, they're going to be giving us this new phone number today. I think we should allow the registration.
Without a proper address, or for lack of better words, it's not a proper address. It was a good address. But when we tried to contact him, we couldn't even contact him by phone. There was no voicemail set up. And then the phone got shut off, and then he changed the number. So there's still a violation here. 72 hours. And then when he changed the phone last month, that's a substantial amount of time, did not notify us. So there was still no way to contact him.
I'm at an impasse here on this one. I mean, I think that he would have gotten those letters if that mailing service was working properly. It's not like it was a friend he was relying on or a relative, as we've seen in past, that it didn't get resolved. The phone number adds a little bit point. So just going back, I have to look at the date real quick of when you tried to call him on the phone.
February 27th, March 2nd, March 19th.
And he came into the office when? March. Because when he came in, he actually came in during the appeal period by fate. He walked in the door. At that time, was the new phone number in effect when you were in the planning department, is I guess the question.
The denial occurred on April 5th.
Okay.
And so he must have come in sometime between April 5th and April 20th. He indicated they had changed his phone number about a month ago, which would have been around April 25th. I don't know if about means 4 weeks or 6 weeks or how much. I don't know. Maybe the applicant can.
So it would have been after the fact, after he was at the counter?
So his application had already been denied Potentially. You know, perhaps the appellant can give us a firm date of when the phone number was changed.
Well, it seems to be the case that the phone number did not in fact change until a month ago. What happened was the voice mailbox hadn't been set up, so they couldn't leave a message. That's on 2 phone calls, and then according to the staff report, then the call went to the Verizon Wireless Payment Center on March 19th. That's not a change in a phone number. You wind up with no phone number at that point. And the only thing we have on a change is council's advice that it did in fact change about a month ago, which is after the denial letter went out. And they are now prepared to give the planning department the correct phone number. I think you could make a technical case that there isn't actually a violation until after the denial letter went out.
Well, I'm just
which
reading
they're
on
about to fix.
170A.1. It says registration of medical cannabis cultivation site pursuant to this chapter may be invalidated by the planning director if they did not comply. It says may be. I'm sorry?
It's discretionary.
It's discretionary. So it's not, I mean, it's not.
There's one other odd bit here. I don't know that there's a requirement that he have a telephone number.
No, there's a requirement, there's a way for us to get a hold of him, and there wasn't.
And that
And he-
wasn't his problem, though. That was the mailing.
And the mail was at his registered address. Okay, so you're asking for permission to come to the mic and interrupt our deliberation.
Which is foolish.
I know,
better.
gosh, I'm gonna let you go. Go
I should
ahead,
know
if you've
better.
got something to offer us, please.
Do you have a current phone number?
There is a landline that was provided on the original registration form that still exists and is held by Mr. Crivello. It's 209-293-4352.
Do you know what number you called?
Yeah, that's Mr. Bryden's phone number.
That's the landline at the cultivation site.
Did we call that number?
We did. That was the way we got the number from Mr. Bryden for Mr. Curvelo.
In other words, you stopped calling that number after you were given this other phone number.
That number, it was assumed, was for Mr. Bryden. And
You assumed that, but you didn't call it anymore.
Apparently, it was the number for
I
super.
mean, that makes
fire.
sense. I'm not criticizing.
No, I
Don't
understand
take
why
it
you would do
way.
that too.
Okay.
Please, I'm not criticizing. I'm just trying to get the sequence. Once you had this other number that you thought was the correct one, which may have been only one of 2 numbers, you stopped calling the landline.
We stopped calling what apparently is a landline after Mr. Bryden resigns.
So the answer is yes. Thank you.
So was Mr. Bryden still on premises?
For another further clarification, I believe there are 2 numbers. There's Mr. Bryden's number listed as his personal, which they planning may have called. It's 209-293-1116. The landline at the cultivation site is the 293-4352.
And that's currently in effect.
That is.
And that hasn't changed.
No, that's been there for years.
And if we call that number, somebody answers?
Yeah.
Right
If
now.
I'm there right now,
Somebody's
I'll
there.
go answer it. There's
You're not
nobody,
there.
there's nobody there right now.
But
Is there a
it's an open
voicemail?
line.
Yeah, it's an open landline, Volcano Company.
All right, so we need to move this forward because we're hanging up here, so what do you?
Well, it looks like there was no change.
Yeah, I have no hang up at all. I don't think there's been a violation.
So. I guess I'm not going to have him, you guys need to give me some direction here. I can have him read the resolution, you can vote it up or down, and is that which direction you want to go?
Sure.
Okay, you want to read the
Absent
resolution?
of rescission, that's about the only option we have, I think.
He's not gonna send it.
So if it's the intent to grant the appeal, I would revise the resolution where it says, be it therefore resolved, the planning commission grants the appeal by Rodney Crivello based on the following findings. And finding number 1 would be, there was no change in phone number or address.
Okay.
And then finding number 2 would remain the same. Finding number 2 would be removed, and number 3 would stay the same.
Okay.
Just be renumbered.
Do I have polling here, 3 people that are going to go along with that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, read it as amended, please.
Staff recommends that the Planning Commission adopt Resolution 2018-040, thus, as amended, thus granting appeal 2016-566, thereby not upholding the director's denial of application 2016-566.
Good job, thank you, thank you.
I so move.
Can I get a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you very much.
Just for the record, we still need the information that was requested in those letters that were never delivered.
It's all the same still. Nothing's changed.
No, but the information that we were trying to get from the letter that was sent saying we still need this.
Exactly.
Well, that's not. Okay, we are going to move on to number 5, which is appeal number 2016-949. You represent, okay, thank you. We're ready.
This is Appeal 2016-949 by Matthew Uribe on behalf of Huntington Park Cannabis Providers Association. This application was denied for failing to provide demonstrable or verifiable evidence of receipt of a state seller's permit for the medical cannabis cultivation operation located on the parcel prior to September 7, 2016. While reviewing the appellant's application on April 11, 2018, staff found that the seller's permit provided for the registrant had been opened and closed on July 1st, 2016, and as well was issued for an address in Riverside, and pursuant to section 6067 of the Revenue Taxation Code, seller's permit's only valid for the location on the seller's permit, and as the permit was for a location other than the cultivation site and had been closed, it was invalid, and therefore the registrant didn't provide the seller's permit by September 7, 2016.
Have any questions, or you want to go straight to representation?
I have one question, and that is the actual application form was submitted before or on June 30th, 2016.
Yes, it was part of the large line of
It wasn't received until, and the seller's permit was apparently, was it denied? Or
it was opened and closed on July 1st.
Closed on July 1st. Okay.
Okay.
So, Charnel James representing the applicant. We're actually asking today for a continuance. What I have for the board, and I've already showed it to the planner, we have the printout, the screen printout, because they are supposed to do that, and they did that like the good clients that they are, of both their registration and their sign out that has the dates on them, and I'll provide that, as well as for, at one point there, I guess the organization isn't an issue, right? We have that taken care of. So if I may approach the board so I can, sorry, I have one copy of it. I was having difficulty with my
That's
copy
for
here.
us.
That's for the board. We have, it was issued for both the main offices, which are down in Riverside, and for the location. When we called the Board of Tax Franchise to figure out why it's being suspended as of July, if you'll see on there, it was actually opened and issued on June, I believe, 24th. They couldn't figure it out. We've escalated it. It is now being addressed by a senior account administrator. They have all of our reports. They have our quarterly tax statements, so they don't know why it's marked as closed. So we are just asking for a couple more weeks to get that advanced analysis back from the Board of Supervisors and either have them correct the problem or tell us why it was that it was incompleted. So that's what we're asking for today.
So what basically you're saying, you're trying to establish there was no violation, it was the
correct
state that messed up.
Yeah,
So they
exactly.
opened and closed on the same day? Is
It
that-
didn't see and it didn't open and close. You'll see the document that's going to be sent over to you. It actually was issued on the 24th of June. So it closed in July. We don't know why. And
July of what year?
Of 2016. We don't understand that because all of the quarterly taxes were filed. So they're trying to, the state is trying to figure out why it's
So they
showing
took
that.
their money?
Took the money. Didn't have a problem getting paid. So
That sounds
if we could have some more time, I could get all of that to the planning department and this might become a moot issue.
Why, I guess it's an easy answer to this, why this hasn't been resolved before now. You've been working on this for months, have you, or?
No, we've been working on it since we got notified we were denied because the
But
permit was invalid. We had no
You
idea.
were no idea, okay.
When
and-
they take your money, we assume
And
that
you're
everything's
going
fine.
to, and either what you're submitting today or what you will submit shows that the permit was good for both
Exactly.
addresses.
Right, and the only thing that we probably won't bring to the chairs our actual, because we don't want it to become public records, our actual tax documents, but we'll be happy to share that with the planning department to help clarify this issue. So, and we're waiting for the analysis, so I can provide all of that to Mr. Moore probably in about 2 to 3 weeks. We'll have everything.
Yeah, what's your pessimistic view of the timing?
This is the state franchise board. I'm
Well,
hoping I'll
it's
have an
really
answer before next year.
It's the Department of Tax Administration or
Yeah,
something.
Department of Tax Administration.
Right.
Honestly,
So let's talk about this Riverside address on the
Right.
seller's permit. What's that about?
they're actually, but there's 2 address. That's the original office address, and then the cultivation site. So there's actually, it'll be the same tax ID number. It's just the different locations, the various locations that are tied to that. So you have the same tax ID number for various premises. So, and they would have submitted the master, which is from the corporate offices.
What, if anything, was submitted with respect to the seller's permit to the planning department by September 7th of 2016?
The actual seller's permit was submitted to them
When was it submitted?
with our application.
And it only had the address down south, correct?
That I'm not sure. You only got one of the seller's permits, correct?
We only got one seller's permit, and it was faxed to the office on March 24th of 2017.
Okay.
What, I guess, and I'm not trying to be, what is this showing me?
So
It's not showing me anything.
those are the registration printout pages with the dates and the tax and the lines that show when they were applied for. So if you look at the top, it has the web page number. All of my clients, I tell them to print those pages. That shows that your seller's permit has been approved, the name of the company that's been approved in, what your quarterly reporting is, your next quarterly report date, and then the other one is the password and the sign-in.
Okay, and then let's go back to, so when you go on and you look at a registration status, you can't see and you can't do a printout of they are taking money and they're collecting?
No.
You can't see any of that? Okay.
No.
And then my other question is, I want to go back to the Riverside address again because I want to be clear on that. So are you saying to me that Riverside, is that where they live? Why is Riverside being used and not the address where the business is being run?
Both addresses are identified as locations under the seller's permit number. So what's being provided is a corporate office. So
Okay.
there's still a corporation structure that helps manage and takes care of everything. This is one of other sites that is being handled for this
Okay.
patient alliance.
And does our planning department have the Riverside address?
The Riverside address is the address for the Thompson Advocacy Group, a legal firm that was assisting the
Okay.
register.
Okay.
And if we grant the continuance, you will come back with us to us with something that will show that the seller's permit showed both locations.
Absolutely.
Charnel, how long do you think that's going to take them?
It's the state. They're telling me that it should take them less than 2 to 3 weeks. When I talked to the analyst this morning on my drive down here, she was hoping to have something for me by the first week of June. I would ask for 4 weeks because I know that they take forever to get stuff done.
Can you have the appellant drive up there and get it personally?
Well, it's not that we're just waiting to pick something. I live in Sacramento. I could drive across and go pick it up myself. What we're waiting for is for the analyst to figure out why it's being shown as suspended, because it shouldn't be. So they have to fix that issue in their system, and then it'll show correctly.
Do you
on
have
the
any
website.
emails or anything that you can prove to us that you've communicated with them?
Today? No, I don't have any of that with me today. Most of the conversations, honestly, have been on the phone because we're trying to get something solved.
Yeah.
So we don't want to waste time emailing.
We're just trying so hard to wrap all this up and to keep going out there is killing us. Okay, so let me see if I can go to public comment.
Absolutely.
And then, unless you had something further you needed to say.
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there any public comment on this appeal? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to bring it back. And do you have any rebuttals?
I would just add that as of September 7th, 2016, there was no seller's permit in this file. And that's why staff sent a letter on, I believe it was
March 20?
Yes, and then on March 24th, then the seller's permit was faxed to the, and that's March 24th, 2017. The seller's permit was faxed into the planning department.
Have you spoken directly with the sellers department?
With the tax and fee administration? No.
Okay. Okay.
So it'd be the department's position that the urgency ordinance was not complied with because you did not receive a copy of the seller's permit, no matter whether there was a stop on this permit or not, correct?
Correct. And then the one we received was invalid.
Well, did you receive any documentation by September 7th of 2016 that a seller's permit with respect to this operation had been received?
No.
Nothing in the file?
No seller's permit until March 24th, 2017.
And it's the responsibility of the applicant to bring you that documentation by September 7th and put it in the file.
Correct.
So if he had been doing what he was supposed to have been doing and brought you your documentation, he would know he was suspended.
Correct.
Well, I think he had a copy of the seller's permit, I assume.
To be able to fax it to us, I
Yes.
would also assume that, yes.
He just didn't file it, whether he knew that it was valid or not at the time.
So in the past, while you and I have sat here, I think it was pre-them, we had September 7th dates come up. And we didn't have documentation, but they were able to come in and show us that they did meet the deadline and they did apply. And that's where my brain is going with this one is he's showing me he went on there and did that, even though he didn't bring it in. So I'm transitioning my brain here.
Well, we did have a case, if I recall it correctly, where an applicant had a seller's permit in hand.
In his pocket.
And simply forgot to include it with the rest of his packet. And in fact, he had it prior to submitting his application for registration. And we termed that a clerical error, which it was. He had it. I'm a little troubled by the fact that this copy of a seller's permit that we have does not have the cultivation site listed. And it appears to say that the permit authorizes them to engage in the business of selling tangible personal property at the above location, which is presumably the cultivation site. And I think Ms. James has said that the permit that they're now trying to get, as I understand it, would have both sites on it.
Yeah, I understood, well, we'll be going back to her, but I understood her to say that this permit that we see covered both addresses somehow. and that she was going to show us that if she came back.
But when you look at it, it doesn't show that.
No.
Okay.
But I think I also understood Ms. James to say that a copy of this seller's permit was submitted with the application.
Right.
So we might need a little clarification on,
Okay, you want to come up and
that.
give us a hand with that?
In the application that we have a copy of from the office, it has the seller's permit in it. So if it wasn't in the one that was given to them, I'm actually asking for them to to try to send me a copy of that so you guys can have it. I don't know how quickly they'll get back to me, and I'm trying to log on to the text. But that would have been a clerical error because it's in our application binder. So that's why it was very easy for them to fax it over to them. And as far as would we know on March whether it was invalid? No, we wouldn't have known that because we were paying the taxes. So why would we have known that?
and the copy of the seller's permit that we have in our file, it has an account number of 6/24/2016. That's the one that you have in your file?
Okay.
You have the seller's permit right there.
That's what was faxed to them, I think. I'd ask the department, do you have the original application here?
Yes.
And have you checked through it to see if it has a copy of the seller's permit?
It has a copy of the seller's permit that was faxed on March 24th pursuant to the missing
Well,
requirements.
No, I mean, the original application.
There was no
Was-
seller's permit submitted until March 24th, 2017.
Okay.
But Ms. James is saying she did have it in her file. And the account number appears to correspond with the date of 6/24/2016. And so my question is whether what she has in her file is the same thing as what was faxed and which we have in our files on 3/24/2017.
If I can look at that, I can tell you real quick.
It seems to me that our discussions are still a little bit premature. I think we're going to have to get more information from the state, and then these other discussions are certainly extremely important, but
This is the exact same thing, and on here it clearly says that it was established on 6/24/2016. Do they have a copy of this in their staff report?
Yes.
Yeah, it's that they asked for it and they received this as a fax.
Right. Again, that would have been a clerical error. In my binder, it has it in the binder, so.
The start date, 6/24/2016, that is the date you expect to start paying sales tax, not necessarily when the permit is issued.
You could apply for a permit in March of 2017 and have that start date in your account number.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay, does the department have objections to a continuance?
We see no reason why it necessarily should be granted on account of there was no seller's permit in the file on September 7, 2016.
Except for there has been other, both in front of this planning commission and within the department itself, to allow corrections for clerical error. And what we're asking for is, what the entire appeal was written on is whether or not this was a valid permit at the time that it was submitted. And we are working with the state to have them provide that proof. And we all know the state doesn't work that fast. We have been diligently working on
I
it
just
since
wish you
we
had
received
brought us some documentation to show us that you have contacted the state, something so that we have something to work off of. I mean, it's like we're sitting here with nothing before us to work off of, and it would have been nice to have some documentation or...
Except for all of this has been by the phone. If we did it through email, I would need 6 months' time because that's how backed up that they are. This has to be done by the phone so that we can get information
We've had
taken
others
care
bring
of.
us email documentation and reviewed the email
Other
documentation.
people have had to deal with the franchise tax board on this
Now, you've
particular.
got to get your
end.
agency
So
straight
why are
here.
we waiting
Yeah.
until today
The
to
new
ask for
tax.
continuance? Again, this has happened again.
Because once they got the notice, they don't have a choice but to come before us once the agenda goes out, and the agenda's going out sooner. I'm assuming that's,
Exactly.
Madam Chair, given the fact that had, with the request for the letter, we had requested them to submit that documentation, and had that documentation been adequate for our purposes, it had showed the date, it was the right address, we would have accepted that. I'm not sure if that's really the best practice, but that's what we've been doing, so accepting late documentation in some cases. I would say that relying on just the fact that we didn't have it on September 7th would probably be inconsistent with the practice that we've been doing with some of this documentation. So that with that, I would accept a continuance to get that documentation, but I would need to be sure that it was actually valid, during that time frame. And there's ways that we can investigate further as to when it was actually requested, because the dates are arbitrary based on when the seller says, this is when I was, cultivating, and this is when I intend to pay taxes on. It could be in advance, it could be, previous date. That's not necessarily the date that it was applied for.
so if they're able to produce this documentation, can they just take that to you and you resolve it, or does it have to come back?
I think that let's continue it to a date certain. If it can be resolved, then we'll
You'll
just pull it
resolve
from the
it.
account. We'll
Okay.
resolve it. If not, then we'll bring it back.
Okay.
The only thing that we'd ask, we did submit those documents to you, we'd ask that the password be redacted, because that's the password to our entire account. We can have that done, so, because it's a public record.
I don't even know where those
Thank you.
documents were.
What about the issue that the copy of the seller's permit I have does not list the cultivation site? How is that to be remedied?
One of the things that we can provide so the tax, all right, what are they called now these days?
Sellers, franchise tax board.
Exactly.
Tax
They can provide
administration.
us all of the locations in which the tax ID number is covered for. So when I talk with the adjuster next time, I'll make sure she includes that in the email or letter, however she's going to send that information.
So when you apply for the tax ID number, are they going to be able to prove that these were were they all applied for at the same time, or was there one applied for one day and one applied for the other day? Is there going to be specific information telling us when this particular one was
should.
applied?
Yeah. I'm assuming their system usually has that information on our side that we go in to pay the taxes on. So I'll ask the accountant if he can pull that up from our side and we can print that on our side.
Okay.
Thank you.
You want discussion?
I was waiting to see what Annette's doing with the calendar,
Ah.
because we have to have date certain.
Yeah.
14th or the 28th.
I'm sorry? Oh, yeah, that's true. We did. No, not on the continuance. Okay, if we're going to consider continuance, we will need to take public comment on that. I'd like to poll the commissioners to see if you're all willing to do a continuance, so I know if I even need to go to public comment. So can I poll on a continuance only?
Well, I think you need to take public comment regardless.
Okay, got it.
So ask for public comment.
Can we have public comment on the continuance? Okay, no comment. Thank you. Closed. Coming back to the commissioners.
I would agree to a continuance, and I think providing sufficient time to get this done is very important, and I would like to do it on the basis, as suggested by the planning commissioner, that we go to, is it June 28th? To June 28th is a date certain, with the discretion with the planning director to withdraw the denial if he wants.
I would like to say that I'll go to the 28th, but I'm not going to continue it beyond that. So I would like the appellant and representation to stay on top of the state No excuses. Make certain that they know this is before us to get resolved.
So is that a second?
That's a second. I can't second it because I'm the
I
chair.
was discussing, I wasn't making a motion
I was
yet.
just adding comments to his
Yeah.
discussion.
And I would add to her comments that we would want to have the established that it's in the file of the applicant, the copy that was submitted. So you're probably going to have the applicant here to state that.
Do I have a second for?
Second.
Okay, thank you.
Shall I make the motion now?
I thought you did.
No, that was my discussion.
I would so move as Commissioner Leiter stated.
Thank
And I
you.
second that.
Okay. So, and we have a date certain of June 28th in that motion, just making sure everybody knows that. Can, do all in favor say aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so 4-1. Thank you. Yeah, I know. Okay, so it is 11:45, and we have we have 2 appeals and then the amendment. We're gonna make it, aren't we? Okay. Do we want to go to lunch now? And then we can also do the resolution that we're gonna be bringing back? Okay. So let's go ahead and go to lunch, and we'll come back at 12:45.
Thank you for